Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. I apologize for this video being out pretty late, but this type of video I will be doing every couple weeks. So every 2 weeks, I will be doing this type of video where I analyze recent polls taken, because a lot more polls are being taken for 2018, and a lot of them are leading up into the midterm elections, and they're going to get a lot more accurate, considering that more important pollsters will be out there polling instead of polling where they did before, possibly 6 months before the election. Now that we are less than around 90 days away, we can actually check right here. Let's see if they have well, they don't. That's pretty interesting, but we could be looking at what we would normally see on the electoral map. On the sidebar, it would have less than 90 days away from the election, so that's pretty interesting. And that means polls are going to get a lot more accurate, and also people are going to be polling relatively quicker, I guess. There are going to be polls out every single day compared to before. Even we see it in some of these days where it was maybe once or twice a day. Now we're starting to see a whole lot a day. So pretty much I'm going to be running through the entire polling data, I guess, we see here from July 29th all the way up to August 9th. That is, I guess, the most recent polls that were taken. So we're starting off, and we see a couple of polls that we see on our screen now, but I'm actually going to be doing this in a very specific order. We're starting off with the state of Arizona, and the most recent poll that I wanted to point out was the poll that came out from ABC 15/OH Predictive Insights that shows Kyrsten Sinema leading Martha McSally by 4%, consistent with the Gravis poll adds up, and then before it was Emerson with +8, NBC News with +11, and CBS News with +8 for Sinema. So the lead has narrowed down for Kyrsten Sinema over Martha McSally. However, she is still leading by 4% in a Republican state. She is currently leading by 7% on the average, and right now she has 48% of the vote. That is a number I wanted to point out because she only needs 2.1% more to win this election. All right, even if there are undecided voters, the chances are that many of them are Democrats and many of them are Republicans. This is the state of Arizona. It is no longer a safe GOP state, a likely GOP state, and if anything, a lean GOP state. But at this point in time, with 2018 rolling around, it seems like Arizona could go to the Democrats. I'm going to be coming out with a video today talking about whether or not Trump will help or hurt the GOP in 2018, and you're going to see I will mention Arizona, and the reasoning goes with that. So that's a new poll that's pretty interesting. Shows Sinema at a pretty good advantage at this point, considering she's already at 48%, which means that this race could have a great possibility of going blue, which is why I don't truly understand why some pollsters still have that race as lean red. But Quinnipiac came out with a poll. I've covered this one before, but it shows Cruz ahead by 6, so that is very good for Ted Cruz. But that is what I've already covered before, so it's not too important. But here's a new poll that's from not really super new, but something that's, I guess, changes what we look at this race, because before Rick Scott was looking like he was going to win by less than 1%. But now Rick Scott is leading by 1.2%. This new poll from Mason-Dixon shows him ahead by 3%. I have mentioned this poll before. However, there are going to be a number of more polls that are going to be coming in once I do my next Senate prediction. So that's something to look out for as well. Rick Scott expands his lead on the average in the United States Senate race in Florida. Could show a little bit more signs of that state going to the GOP. But here's a new poll from Suffolk that shows Dean Heller ahead by 1% over Jackie Rosen. All right, there's a poll taken around a month before from Gravis that shows her ahead by 4%, and I'm going to ignore the poll from Nevada Independent because that one was done back in April. But the pretty much average right here is Jackie Rosen is leading by a very small amount. Right now, even though Dean Heller is very unpopular, not many people are throwing their support behind Jackie Rosen at this point. The most recent poll shows Jackie Rosen at 40%, Dean Heller at 41%. There are 19% undecided voters. That is pretty crazy. I think that would benefit the Democrats, though, because that is a Democratic state. But again, we need to still focus on that Senate race because there is a Republican incumbent. Another state with a Republican incumbent, but of course is not running. Georgia governor's race, Brian Kemp versus Stacey Abrams. Pretty much 2 polls taken in July. It's an actual tie here. They actually switched numbers. 44 for Abrams in the first poll, 46 for Abrams in the second one, 46 for Kemp in the first one, and then 44 for him in the second poll. So when we look at this, Abrams led by 2 in the most recent one. Brian Kemp led by 2 in the earlier one, but both of which were taken in July, so this is pretty accurate for this point. But it's really surprising seeing Stacey Abrams actually up there, even at 46%, when many people thought that this state would be likely or even safe for the GOP at this point. In the Nevada governor race, there are a couple Actually, not a couple. There is one poll that just came out in July that shows the Republican candidate ahead by 1%, and the most recent poll shows Sisolak ahead by 6%. Sorry, the earliest poll shows Sisolak ahead by 6%, but that was done in April. So right now, the general consensus actually is that Adam Laxalt could actually win the governor's race out of a Democratic state. The Senate race may be a different scenario, but the Texas governor race can now be officially landed in the safe column, because almost all polls that have been taken recently, actually all of them, except for one, shows Greg Abbott ahead by 10%, by over 10%, and the one that's not really fitting in with the rest shows them ahead by by 10%. So still not bad whatsoever. So right now, the current average is him leading plus 12.6. But also, there's a new Oregon poll out, and I didn't really want to cover it 100%, mainly because it showed a Republican leading by 1 in the governor's race. I do have a couple people in Oregon tell me that Kate Brown is pretty unpopular. However, I do not trust the numbers saying that Oregon somehow will elect a Republican governor at this point in time, when the Democrats are pretty good in the generic ballot. I didn't cover the generic ballot because I typically cover that in other types of videos. This is just new 2018 polls. But right now, if we look at this, Bueller leads with 43.1%, and Brown has 41.9%, so around a 1.1% lead. However, when I looked at this poll, I noticed it had an R next to the name. So I was looking at where this poll was taken and what type of voting group that they were looking at. So do you have question 3 was do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of Donald Trump? Pretty much total favorable is 44% and total unfavorable is 53%. And then I realized why the Republican was somehow leading in an Oregon poll. Okay, we go over to the tracking Donald Trump from Morning Consult, and it is a negative 18 in the state of Oregon for Donald Trump. That does not at all add up with what we're seeing on the this poll taken. And it did have an R by the name, which means that it typically is skewed in the favor of the Republicans. Not necessarily that the data is messed with, but the areas that they do poll in typically lean to the right intentionally. But that's when I realized that poll was not necessarily the most accurate. So when it came down to it, this is the poll I was talking about here on the Oregon governor race that actually has tied the race if you get rid of that January poll. Bueller plus 1 actually doesn't tie. It shows him ahead. Bueller plus 1, and then Gravis shows a tie. But with the R by the name, that's when I started realizing, wait, that doesn't fully add up. So right now, the average is Brown plus 5.3 because they are counting that poll from January, but we are going to start to see a couple more polls. So the final thing that I want to note is the president's approval rating. These are still 2018 polls, and right now his approval rating has actually gone up 0.1% from where my last video was. It was at 43.3%. Now it is at 43.4%. His disapproval rating has been around the same, but still negative 8.6 nationwide. Pretty good for the president right now based off where he was before. So that pretty much recaps all the individual races that I wanted to talk about with a number of these polls. In general, it looks like the Republican Party is actually gaining momentum in terms of polling numbers. So something to look out for, especially with that Ohio special election coming up to be counted soon and possibly even going into a recount. So again, when it comes down to it, the GOP right now looks like they're doing a little bit better. It probably is doing a little bit better, but all that matters is when we come down to the general election and we'll actually see what is happening in each race. So again, just to recap, looking through all those races in a number of key swing states, it's very important to see that the GOP actually is improving in polling data. So something to look out for Democrats and something to be happy about for Republicans. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.